I'm writing my first fiction novel right now. Why I did it was after rewatching an interview with Joseph Campbell and Bill Moyer on the power of myth. And Joseph, with all of his heart, saying we need new myths.
So each needs a new myth.
Each needs its own myth all the way. Love thy enemy, open up.
I just see the power of new fictional characters, archetypes, stories, and that being such an amazing vehicle of narrative. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I hope people start diving more into myths. Sure, kick back your feet, watch a good series, watch a good show, enjoy yourself, but try to find the deeper symbolism in the story, because that's what Joseph Campbell's body of work was, here's this story or movie, and here's the deeper thing in this character or their storyline.
You may find that with a proper introduction, this subject will catch you. And so what can it do for you when it does catch you?
Welcome, everyone, to the Eons Ahead podcast. I'm your host, Alex Wolf. And on the show, we like to have deep, intimate conversations with amazing people that are eons ahead. But what does it mean to be eons ahead? Well, it means they're ahead of their time. They see things other people don't see, and they're able to communicate these visions to the world and manifest them into reality, making a positive impact for humanity. They're doing things that other people are not doing, which I love. They're often trailblazers, pioneers, conscious thought leaders, and our guest today is definitely in that category. His name is John Fitch. John is an author and entrepreneur who now tries to live a simple life living on his farm here in Texas. Like the great author Wendell Berry, he spends a lot of time in nature and getting humbled by farm projects. The byproduct of this labor is getting epiphanies for his latest book titles, outlines, paragraphs, and edits. He writes books on things that fascinate him so he could learn more. And he likes to write more as a fellow student than as a teacher, which I love. He's living the dream. He's eons ahead. He's here today. He's a new friend, John Fitch.
Right on, brother. We met at a baby shower or gender reveal.
Gender reveal, that's right.
And we hit it off on both of us having backgrounds of true labor, hands-on work.
Yeah,
and
heck yeah.
we're still capable of that, but I think we're using our minds and our hearts a bit more nowadays. But loved connecting with you in that way, and it's really dope to be here.
Hey, amen, brother. It's great to have you here. I felt your energy as soon as we met and just lit up the room, and I knew there was something about you, and I ordered your books, so I'm really excited to dive in. Yeah, of course. I'm stoked, man, and I've got a lot of questions about them today.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy to learn that from you. And as I mentioned in the intro, and this is something I could relate to a lot, I always call myself a student of life. There's just always so much to learn. And whenever I think I got it figured out, life will humble me really quickly and show me that, yes, I am a student. I never call myself a master in anything. So tell us a little bit about that in your writing style, and how has a student of life impacted the way that you show up?
I think it comes down to, if all of us were to reflect back to our developmental education, whoever your teachers were, wherever you got taught, homeschool, private school, public school, farm school, whatever, I think we learned best when the person delivering the knowledge or facilitating the learning was more of the guide on the side, rather than this oracle just telling you like it is. And I think when people read books, I at least say for myself, the books that grabbed me, it wasn't coming from that sage on the stage energy. It was like reading someone's somewhat edited, better put together journal. And I think that gains a trust, it gains a humility, and it makes you not feel guilty that you still have a lot to learn. And
right.
if the author, if he or she is writing in that way, I think it just grabs you, because it gets rid of that shame and guilt.
Right.
And then, you could say selfishly, it's also easier for me to produce books when I'm not trying to convince myself I'm writing an academic paper. I respect the people that do those. That's not my craft. But I don't have that feeling of the whole science community is looking over my shoulder, looking through every line that I've made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just, like you just said a bit ago, I'm kidding myself if I have it figured out, but I think we're all figuring it out.
Yeah.
And so I try to bring that into all of my writing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, we're figuring it out for sure. And it sounds like just the way that you speak, John, you're very authentic. So it's like you're being yourself when you're writing, and it's very relatable, and it's coming from the right place. Sounds like it's coming from the heart, and I think people can really relate with that and resonate with that. And it definitely takes the guards down and doesn't put someone on a pedestal, which I love. So really, really interested. How did you dive into writing? Was it something that you're always into as a young man, or tell us a little bit about the backstory?
Sure. And I hope this backstory helps people. Grew up reading books. My mom was very supportive we had an endless budget for books.
Cool.
And if there was downtime, if I got tired of playing outside, which was rare, but it did happen, and I was bored, her default was take me to the library or take me to the bookstore and have at it, kid.
Awesome.
And so I've always been a consumer of books. And there was always this voice in the back of my mind that was like, oh, it'd be so cool to be an author. But authors were like, I put them way up on a pedestal. Like, there's no way. I hate English class.
Yeah.
I hate all my writing assignments. And yeah, that voice, that doubt has been in my head until I was 29 years old. And I then started doing more inner work, started to, in my therapy, get introduced to cognitive behavioral therapy, which is all about like it's a lot of things, but the thing that really resonated with me was, what's the thing you're afraid of? Like, just lean a little more into it. Like, there's more inputs in your control than you realize. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna write a book at some point. And I was like, even though I don't deserve to do that whatsoever. And I had this life-changing experience in a place called Ikaria. Some pronounce it Ikaria, but it's one of the easternmost Greek islands.
Oh, cool.
And they call it the island where people forget to die.
Wow.
Because it has some of the most centenarians, people over 100 per capita.
Blue zone.
Yeah, it's like Navy zone. It's like real blue. Nice. And it changed my life, and I started taking lots of voice notes of my experience. I was having all these incredible conversations with these people there, learning about their lifestyle. And very long story put shortly is I was sitting there and I realized I had all these transcriptions. And thanks to modern technology, speech to text is pretty decent. And so suddenly I was sitting there with like a lot of text in front of me. And then I was like, you know what? I'm enjoying these conversations. Let me start a little experimental podcast on this topic of intentional rest. And output was more and more text, more and more text. Suddenly I'm sitting with hundreds of thousands of words worth of text. And I realized that if I'm given a blank page and a blinking cursor, I ain't gonna write nothing, dude. But if I'm given a bunch of sentences and text that came from a conversation I had with myself or somebody else, I love editing.
Cool.
Like, I can do it for hours. There's no intimidation. And so suddenly I realized, just like anything, you get to define what that definition of artist is. And so writer in my head was blinking cursor, blank page. And I would never write a book if that was the case. But then I realized, well, a writer can also just be a really good editor.
Nice.
And I've started putting that hat on and have been able to ship books ever since. But like most good things, it all started with some conversations.
I bet. Yeah. So cool. So when you're in the editing process, when you get in the zone of editing, walk us through a little bit of what's going on in your creativity and what is it about it that's so inspiring for you?
I benefit from hearing my writing out loud. I think if you were to go look at your favorite novel or nonfiction book, or even advertisements that really grab you, speak it out loud and you will realize like, that sounds nice. Like it sounds smooth. It has a beat. It has a pattern to it.
Yeah.
Whereas our internal dialogue can sometimes be very different than if we verbally speak something.
Totally.
So that's where I start. If, whatever mess, was it Hemingway who said the first draft of anything is pure shit? That's liberating actually.
Yeah.
And so, I start with whatever first stab of something I have, and then I just start reading it out loud to myself. Maybe I'll record it and listen back, usually just saying it out loud. I'll start getting ideas like, oh, that's not the best intro of this paragraph or prose. And just an iterative cycle of make some changes, hear it out loud again. And it's that simple for me.
Yeah, it makes sense. Because when you say words, I had this experience a couple of days ago, actually, when we would say words and then we would just feel how that word felt like to our body, right? What was the visceral feeling that it was? And some words had no feeling, and some words were like, oh, that feels really good. And some were like really heavy and just like the word traffic came up, and it was like, what does traffic feel like for you? And I was like, oh, it feels like pretty blah and stuck energy and this kind of stuff. And so it's really interesting to hear you say that, because like these words are powerful, right? Especially when we say them out loud, there's a frequency that goes with it.
And often, just like to make an analogy to words and ingredients, most times we put too many ingredients in a dish, and often the better product is less.
Yeah, simplicity, right, is beautiful. And I get that sense from you where it's really simple and effective, but it hits, it lands. And I started, reading into your books and stuff like that. And it just lands, it's very effective, which I love. I'm always trying to break things down and simplify. There was a quote that I learned when I was a young teacher. I went to aviation school to teach kids how to fly airplanes. And, at first when you're flying, when you bring the student in the airplane, they're just so overwhelmed by all the gauges and gadgets and gizmos and all this kind of stuff. And if you lose them on one point, on one teaching exercise, pretty much the whole rest of the exercise is gone. They're just like, you've lost them. So the method that was taught to me was just simplify, right? And it was a quote actually by Malcolm X that really changed my whole trajectory of how I used to teach. Was intelligence is taking something complicated and making it simple, and ignorance is taking something simple and making it complicated. So I would always just try to simplify things in my teaching career, and then later on in the business world. And so I just love to hear you say that, because it's such an effective way to teach and to share.
Another thing I'll add to that, brother, that's spot on right there. Earlier I mentioned that I run my own work by myself first, but I feel obligated to share that sometimes you got to get out of your own head.
Right.
And some of the most significant moments I've had with any of my books, and also software products I've built as an entrepreneur, take a first draft and put it in the hands of other people. And then just out of deep curiosity, put ego and expectations aside.
Right.
Understand what really resonates with them and what doesn't. And if you or anyone else listening wants to write a book, you can do this in an afternoon. Come up with the title, go on Canva, design a cover concept. Don't even write any prose, any paragraphs. Write the title, the subtitle, and then create a hypothetical table of contents. Because, that's something we always do. And you get a book, you kind of preview like what's all in here.
Yeah. And
hand that out to a handful of people. You will get awesome, heartfelt feedback on like, oh, that chapter title, like that looks really interesting. That one right there doesn't seem that interesting. It's kind of confusing. And you'll see patterns across these people's feedback, and more or less your roadmap is created for you as a writer of the book you should write. Now you just have to, finish the job.
Yeah.
And so other people can be such a gift on adding to that simplicity, because they help you figure out what's probably going to be the key ideas in the book that should exist.
Yeah, makes so much sense. Feedback is just so valuable, right? And it's only when we get in our own way and we don't want to hear, what can be considered criticism.
Yeah.
But it's really the whole point is to just really put it out there and get the feedback and then, okay, go back to the lab and which is all internal anyway, right? And then just put it out there and dial it in. I love it.
Dial it in, baby.
Dial it in. I love it. Okay. Time off. A practical guide. I want to make sure I get the whole title right. A practical guide to building rest ethic, and finding success without stress. I love this. Like, this is what it's all about really here. Like, this is coming from someone, myself, who was a workaholic for a long, long time. I'm sure you could probably relate.
Yeah, we can sponsor each other.
No doubt. No doubt, dude. And especially recently, like, I'm starting to realize, become very aware that the days that I get caught up in the hamster wheel and I'm just spinning my tires, not only is it not productive, but it doesn't feel good. And I'm tired way sooner than I probably should be. At the end of the day, I'm just drained. So tell us, more about this book. And I just want to hear all about it.
Well, I'm a recovering workaholic myself, so with you in that, brother.
Yeah.
And I had a co-author with this book named Max Frenzel, and he also recovering workaholic.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more of your anecdotal storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought Max in as a partner because he is a multi-PhD. And I wanted the book to have some very strong opinions and points on the importance of intentional rest.
Mm-hmm.
And he backed it up with the science.
Ah, nice.
So the book is a good balance of great case studies and things that intuitively remind you. To me, the book isn't trying to teach you anything new.
Mm-hmm.
It's reminding you of something you know.
Right.
So we coined this term rest ethic.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a turning point for me, because there's no doubt you have a solid work ethic.
For sure.
I have a solid work ethic. We all need a solid work ethic.
Right.
But the analogy we make is breath work.
Mm-hmm.
A solid work ethic is like an inhale.
Mm-hmm.
If you and I just right here on this podcast only inhale, this podcast is going to be over in about 7 minutes.
Yeah. Right on.
Or probably less than that.
Maybe.
And so you need an exhale. And so rest ethic felt like the perfect balance. And what I love about the intentionality of those words is when you hear the word work ethic, it's like, wow, that person's super intentional about prioritization, time boxing, a lot of energy into the intentionality of their work. It's like, cool, do that with your rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so the book is not a book on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we kind of poke fun at the word vacation comes from vacate, which is what you do from a burning building.
Oh, geez.
So rest and time off should be much more than the escapism vacation. And one of the powerful pieces of science at the end of the day that we found was from Graham Wallace. This was from, I think, 1910. His body of work was around the creative process in its relation to the way our brain works. And the creative process has 4 phases. There's preparation, incubation, illumination, verification. These outer 2, work ethic, preparation, so planning, scoping, getting ready to do the work, verification, doing the work and waiting to see, is it working or not? Okay. So last I checked, 2 of 4 is only 50%.
Right.
So right here, these 2 in the middle, incubation and illumination, you must intentionally detach from the thing for your subconscious and a bunch of things beyond my neurology understanding. Another way to think about it is when you take intentional time off, inside of you, it's like having a kick-ass co-founder that when you go do what your active forms of rest, passive forms of rest, again, you're just intentionally detaching. Now that co-founder goes to work.
Right.
And that's the incubation. And then illumination, as the word sounds like, I mean, we got a bunch of lights around us. It's light bulb. It's that aha moment. And all of us know those moments when we suddenly get that epiphany or clarity or thing we were really trying to wrap our head around. And that happens when you're not actively engaged in the work.
Right.
And so me as a type A former workaholic mindset, this was so huge for me because I realized that if I'm only grinding and working, I'm only doing 50% of the creative process.
Yeah.
And so the book goes into understanding that, and then the dozens of different types of rest. And just like your work ethic takes so many different components and it's unique to you, so should be your rest ethic.
Dude, I love this so much. And this is the word, you said it, I'm so glad you said it, is a reoccurring theme on this podcast, and a theme for myself is detachment. It's like such a code to learn detachment, because it's like you said, it lets us get out of our own way. And then here comes in the co-founder. I love this terminology. The co-founder comes in and could be God or your higher self or your inner kid or whoever this
bingo
magical, energy is that we're just getting in the way of when we're doing these other two. And then they come in, which is awesome. And then they always do come in. Like but it's up to us to be able to learn how to detach.
And what's really powerful about this is, and you would understand it too as a recovering workaholic, once you lean into this idea of rest ethic, almost overnight, you get rid of the guilt and shame that we used to feel when you would take a break.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now it's like, no, it might be the most important work you do today.
Totally. I love this. So what are some ways that you learned in the beginning to start to detach for the people, the workaholics out there and the people that are stuck in the hamster wheel? What were some ways at the beginning that made the transition to be like, okay, I'm going to detach?
The chapters in the book are broken down into different types of rest. And the one that to me is, there's no excuse. Like you've got 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
At the very least.
For sure.
And it's the chapter title is reflection. Fancy way of saying journaling.
Oh, nice.
And we, in that section, provide a bunch of these really interesting prompts. And one of my favorites is the more of, less of list. So this could be regarding your project. This could be regarding your marriage. This could be regarding your health, your fitness activities. It's asking yourself, what truly energizes me? What truly drains me? And just through a little bit of thinking and zooming out, you can easily, I just take a sheet of paper, write a line down the middle. There's more of side, less of side. And you just bullet point list, like what would you like more of? Because it's energy giving, purpose giving. It's effective. And then what clearly is getting in the way, is adding to stress, draining your energy. And that's on the less of list. And now you've got this artifact that is a bit of a roadmap of, now you know the hard conversations you need to have, or things you need to cut away from, or things you need to double down on. And again, it's just a brief moment of, let me go 100,000 foot view on everything going on right now. And everyone has time for this exercise.
For sure.
And so that was one for me that was powerful, because I was so workaholic, I wasn't taking the time to do that simple exercise and inquiry of myself.
Right.
So that one is very approachable. And then the Japanese call it forest bathing, which is a fancy way of saying go on a walk outside.
Yeah.
We all have a few minutes in between calls, or at the end of the day before you get off the computer and wind down, just literally walking.
Yeah. So simple and so effective. I love it, dude. It really reminds me, like, in my journey of, recovering workaholic and entrepreneur and guy that started companies and exited companies and all this stuff like that, I really went through this journey where I started off really as a thinker, like always overthinking, always in the planning stage and over planning and this kind of stuff. And then evolved from that to more of a doer, where I was always doing things and always trying to accomplish things. And I'm sure this was part of the way that I was brought up. The more I could do, the more I would, get attention and love from my parents and this kind of stuff. And I got really stuck in the doing phase for a long time, long time, up until very recently, until more recently now I'm shifting from a doer to just being. Just being. And this is where I'm starting to sense where your book is going, is like this work, this rest ethic is really just taking time for ourselves just to be and be present. And this is where really the magic happens. And we've kind of been, told a fallacy that we've got to do all the time, but it's really in the being, human being.
Oh man. So there is a chapter in the book, and this goes back to the origin of where the book idea came from on this super blue zone in Greece.
Yeah.
So in ancient Greek culture, regarding the concept of time, they believed that Chronos,
God of time,
God of time, Father Time, which is necessary. Like we love it when the plane takes off at time, or when you're timing your planks.
Yeah.
Like you love Chronos, but they go, what I really love about their wisdom back then, which we have a lot to learn from now, is they go, yeah, that's a thing, but time is more than that. And so they had a second god called Kairos, some pronounce it Kairos, that was a other mythical symbolism that spoke to the density of time. Actually, I have a tattoo right here of the logo that explains it. And so
cool.
1 second could have more density than another. 1 minute could have more density than the other. And we could all reflect back on our lives, those times, those experiences where time felt like it's slowed down.
For sure.
And so I love that they had a God and a concept. And one of the main cultural things on this island where people almost don't die, they default to Kairos living.
Wow.
They don't ignore Chronos. They see its utility. But when I was there, and my host mother, who really was my wake up moment, was like, John, it seems like you've defaulted to obsessing on Chronos. Good luck.
Right.
Because we're kidding ourselves.
Right.
It's too precise. There's too many butterfly effects.
Yeah.
Whereas they default to Kairos living there. And the last thing I'll say about Kairos is the god looks very interesting. He has a ponytail in the front of his head.
Whoa.
Yeah. If you saw someone in public, you'd go, whoa.
Yeah.
Like that dude parties for sure.
Yeah, he parties. Yeah.
But why that symbolism was there is that imagine him being epic opportunities. Once he passes you by, you grab the back of his head. It's bald. You can't.
Right. It's too
you
late.
can't grab it back. And so I love that mysticism and symbolism of that archetype is, again, by this intentional detachment, you open yourself up to these opportunities coming to you that you can see, that you can actually grab, leverage, make use of, versus if you're only just Chronos, go, there tons are just passing you by.
Wow.
And you don't even notice.
Beautiful. I love that, dude. Speaking of Kairos and being in the denser, fuller moments, I know you're a big nature guy, and you like to spend time in nature. You live on a great property here, close to the studio.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit how spending time in nature has impacted your life, especially this chapter of your life, John.
Who's the best designer ever?
Yeah.
Who's the best systems creator ever?
Right.
I mean, nature has so many examples. I'm sure you've probably talked with several people on this podcast, the beautiful approach of biomimicry. And a lot of that applies a lot to the craziest science and engineering. But to me, it also applies to philosophy and psychology. And so I feel like in modern times where we can spin out of control, we forget that the natural environment we live in is the ultimate therapist, the ultimate advisor, the ultimate mentor. And look, I don't have a biology degree. I can't identify every plant out there. I still use my app on my phone to do so. But all of us can benefit from just going out there, and whether you just want to do something active or you just want to sit and meditate. I think whatever's going on in your internal dialogue and big questions, like give it to nature.
Yeah.
And daydream, kind of get lost, stare at things. And it, again, it's like a co-founder. It will give back epiphanies, different frames of looking at things, sometimes like literal solutions to something you have.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned in my intro, Wendell Berry, who's one of my favorite writers and poets who personified nature. And I hope to one day be at a fraction of his level, because nature deserves to be personified. I mean, we are nature. Nature is us.
That's right. Human nature.
Exactly. Human nature. And by being around it, it benefits from you. You benefit from it, and
Totally.
it should be one of your best friends.
Yeah.
So like all of us have a best friend or a few best friends, and we prioritize them. We want to see them. We want to have conversations with them. And to me, nature is no different. And I never have a moment of not having an idea. And it's just because I spend a lot of time outside.
I love that too.
Collaborating with nature.
That's awesome. So inspiring. I love it. And I can attest to that. The more time that I spend in nature, the better I feel. It's that simple, and then sometimes I get that energy and then I go extra hard on my work ethic and stuff like that. And I got to learn to balance it out a little bit more. But every day I try to take time and go spend it in nature, even if it's just listening to my fountain in the backyard and just listening to the water and seeing what kind of downloads come through. But man, it's so therapeutic and it's so relaxing, it's just.
If you don't mind me asking, role reversal.
Yeah, of course.
What is a bird you feel super connected to and why? And what is a flower you feel super connected to and why?
Great question. I love this. Like, my friends that really know me know that I have a real connection to the eagle spirit.
I feel that from you.
Yeah, the eagle has been very impactful in my life, especially the last few years. I've seen them while driving. On my way to Texas, actually, I saw a couple eagles flying, which was really powerful. I felt the spirit. And on a real, more profound level, in ayahuasca last year, when I sat with ayahuasca, I got, not only visited by the eagle spirit, but got to play around with the eagle spirit, and I could, almost embodied it for a little while. It was something like out of this world, So I definitely have a strong connection to the eagle spirit. Came again to a ceremony last year. And for me, it represents freedom. It represents, masculine energy and really getting things done, which I could relate to. And it represents trust as well, and trust is a big thing for me. So yeah, eagle for sure.
Well, can I make a comment on that?
Please, yeah.
Before we get to the flower?
Yeah.
This was 3 weekends ago. I hosted a Comanche elder who guided me and a few others in a really intimate outdoor peyote ceremony.
Beautiful.
And he had this eagle feather fan that, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like how significant that was at the peak of my experience. Wow.
Yeah.
And, many Native American people revered the eagle, and it was such key medicine. And it's really, really beautiful. Lastly, here in the Bastrop area, there's a Mexican eagle called a cara. You should look them up. They're
I'd love to.
super beautiful, have their own energy and medicine. And once you see one, you'll start seeing them more often.
Yeah.
And then before we get to the flower,
Sure.
I feel like this is a reason why we connect is I feel super connected to the peregrine falcon.
Oh, cool.
So
yeah,
raptor energy, baby.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. It's powerful birds, powerful birds. And I love it. I love watching videos on these birds, and I just get so fascinated by them. It's super cool. I got many eagle tattoos, and yeah, it's something that I hold dear to my heart for sure. So thanks for asking. And then flowers lately that came to me in a powerful dream a couple weeks ago was, I didn't know what it was until I found out this past weekend. But it was a cactus flower that only blooms once a year. And I had this dream a couple weeks ago. It was so profound. Like I've never had a dream like this in my life. And it was a flower that was just like this big flower blooming, a white flower with a bit of yellow in it. And I got the feeling, maybe the first time in my life, of just pure oneness, where I just felt one with life. And I was like, wow, this is what it's all about. To be great in life is really to be one with life. And to be one with life is to be great, and that was the message that I got. And I woke up the next morning and I felt almost sick, like I couldn't move. I felt aches and pains, and it was like a cold came on. And I was like, wow, it's crazy. I felt great yesterday. I had this amazing dream, and now I felt sick. So I took the day off, I was like, there's not much I could do anyway. And I just spent the day out in nature. And I just sat with myself and with my feelings. And I just asked myself, is there anything why is this happening? And is there anything that, God, you want to show me by getting sick and stuff like that? And the stuff that came up was incredible. Because it showed me patterns in my life. And one of those patterns was overworking and being in a survival type energy where I got to do all the time like that. And I was able to purge this energy out of me. And since then, I've just felt so at peace, and so relaxed. And it's been such a blessing. So I don't know if that flower, that cactus flower, came to me to like
a totem of sorts.
Totally like a totem, to be like, listen, you got to slow down, and you got to, wherever you're going, this energy, this do, overdoing, hyperactivity doesn't serve you. And it gave me the space, and thankfully I went to nature to get it out of me. But it was such a profound experience. I'm so glad you asked me that. And then I got shown what this flower was this past weekend at the Confluence Festival. And it was a cactus flower that only blooms once a year, on one night of the year. So it was really, really cool. And now I bought that flower essence, and I'm meditating with it again. So yeah, there's a lot of magic to these flowers. I think they're really great representation of consciousness.
I also I see you as again, in my own definition of gentleman, what I'm pushing for more and more of us.
Yeah.
And I think that story also represents like a cactus can survive in harsh environments, can be totally fine, self-reliant, clear boundaries with it.
Yeah, for sure.
But it also can flower.
Yeah.
And I think that is like a good example of what good men should be.
Thank you, brother. I feel that one. That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
But so you said the falcon is your
the peregrine falcon.
Peregrine falcon's badass.
I got two answers for the flowers.
Okay.
My first one was triggered by what you said. I had my first ever rare flower moment in Hawaii. I happened to be at a camping gathering, and the dragon fruit plant,
nice.
It's a specific night in a specific phase of the moon that literally in one night, these enormous alien white flowers come out of, this like draping cactus.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it looks like a full-on cervix. Like it was, and they're everywhere. I suggest anyone type in dragon fruit flower. It is wild looking. And I got to be there and smell it. And then literally the next morning, they're gone. And it's the start of the dragon fruit.
Wow.
And so I wanted to say that too, because it was like, wow, this happens once.
That's so cool.
And then my second answer is, right now on our farm, I've been working really hard to re-prairieise it, if that's a word. And you can buy these anywhere. I recommend Native American Seed Company. They're excellent experts in prairie restoration. And they make this pollinator mix that is specific to where you live. And so my favorite flowers, I don't know all their names. There's dozens of them. Right now, this pollinator mix is taking off, and it's less about the flowers and it's more about the ecosystem of all the bees and butterflies that are coming in. So these flowers that give ecosystem, I have a deep place in my heart for.
I love that, dude. That's fascinating. It's so cool. And the more that, I love what you're doing, John. Like, honestly, it's truly inspiring. I aim one day to be, living on the land and have a farm of my own with some cool livestock and flowers and ecosystem and mushrooms as well. You know, we talked a little bit about that when we met. So I know your favorite flowers now. What about your favorite mushrooms? Do you have a favorite mushroom?
Ooh, cooking. I'm a maitake.
Nice.
Like, that's just, love the flavor, love to use it in broths. I mean, it is like a super, to me, just like you should have like dried chilies in your kitchen, you should have a bunch of maitake.
Yeah.
And then a key moment in my life growing up on a cattle farm was tons of psilocybin cubensis.
Oh, yes.
Golden teachers.
Yeah. My favorite.
I can literally smell them. That mushroom changed my life.
Yeah.
And otherwise I'd be probably still worth talking to, but I'd be a rodeo kid, not as expanded in my worldview if it wasn't for those growing everywhere and all the cow patties on our farm. And yeah, that mushroom, both aesthetically and where it's taken me, like I worship that one.
Amen. Yeah. I've learned so much from the golden teachers. Like, these mushrooms in general are just such wonderful teachers, and golden teachers specifically have had some amazingly profound journeys and insights that I keep with me to this very day. And I'm wondering, John, I know they played a big impact in your life. Where do you see mushrooms, specifically psychedelic or magic mushrooms, playing a role in the world as it continues to unfold? Do you think the world is ready for them? Do you think it's too early? What do you think?
Man. Yeah, I mean, even when I was in, high school and I experienced it, that was one of my first thoughts, was because I felt from that day forward, I'm a forever and compounding enthusiastic optimist.
Love that. Wow.
And I'm like, what if everyone was that?
Yeah.
And I can attribute it to these amazing mushrooms and their intelligence. And so I feel very strongly that, as long as it's done in a safe way, I'm sure there's some people it doesn't agree with. That's beyond my pay grade to establish.
Sure.
But yeah, just in my own family and friend group of mental health struggles that I don't see a reason why not give these a go if you're willing to hand over all of your trust to a pharmaceutical company to give you a compound that none of us can barely pronounce, let alone understand what is it really doing here. And like my mom has had a tragic journey with traditional psychiatry. And there's like this sadness and like thought sometimes of like, man, if she could have done these mushrooms, like, could it have helped unlock some things that would have prevented her from going down that path? And then lastly, I know of a friend of a friend who did psychedelic mushrooms in hospice.
Wow.
And that story was like, okay, yeah, I've benefited from these, but their effect in a graceful transition, it's like, I mean, that's beyond profound. And the amount of people that right now, I mean, you and I, we're healthy. We're probably going to be here tomorrow. We're not sitting here going like, I got hours or days left. And if we were, like, yeah, there'd probably be some internal tension and fear and anxiety, and from the research and some of my own anecdotes of these mushrooms helping people like fully be prepared for death and ease into it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's God's work right there.
It's God's work, man. Well said. Very well said. I think they're so valuable on so many different levels, from physical health to mental health, emotional health, and even, spiritual health, like in hospice situation would just be so valuable. They're so intelligent, they're just like connected to this divine intelligence of nature, and goes back to what we said earlier, when we could just get out of our own way and allow these teachers, these wonderful teachers like golden teachers, to show us these epiphanies. We've talked about epiphanies a few times today, and I know you get epiphanies by being in nature on your farm as well. And I look at epiphanies, another word for it is like a code. You get the epiphany or you get the code, and now you have a new perspective. And with a new perspective, you have a new mind. And with the new mind, now you're looking in a new direction. And now all of a sudden you're going on a whole new trajectory in your life. So you've shared some good codes here already, John. I'm wondering if you had one code or one epiphany that you'd like to share, and take your time, one epiphany that you'd like to share that made a big impact in your life that you wouldn't mind sharing with the viewers and listeners.
It's easy to do damage with a statement. So anything that ends in a period or an exclamation point. It's very hard to do damage by asking a question.
Nice.
And I wrap that all in, there's so many people that are suffering. And one of my best friends growing up, who was also my cousin, committed suicide suddenly. And I was with him 30 minutes before.
Wow.
And we were like outside playing.
Wow.
And I went to a very dark place for a while after that. And my mushroom journey helped unlock it. I went from a victim type energy of like, how could this happen to him, me, his family, my family, to more of a like, he was suffering. And I didn't ask enough questions. Others didn't ask enough questions. And that I'm not going to live with guilt, but I'm going to live with like an action plan of like, doesn't matter if it's the guy at Home Depot who just helped you find something in the maze of all the tools there, or a barista when you're in a rush and you just want your damn coffee. It's like, it takes no effort to just ask a question.
Yeah.
And that can save someone's life, help them snap out of something, maybe make them go deeper into something. And again, it's a very easy thing that can have an enormous positive impact. And again, I see it very hard to do damage if you're ending most of your phrases in question marks.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, no, I think that's a real sign of emotional intelligence and maturity and curiosity, and curiosity is such a great energy to be in. It goes back to what we were saying about the student, we don't know, and especially if we're genuinely curious on the question.
Yeah.
And you never know what's going to bring up in that person, and you might
I just wanted, I got a bit of goosebumps. So as an author, like you said, you also as a student of geeking out on words.
Yes.
The etymology of the word question. So the utility of ION, the extension, is to initiate what's prior. So a question initiates a quest.
I was literally thinking it in my mind as you were saying it. That's one of the reasons I love the word question, because it has the word quest in it. And I used to think, I was like, oh, it's a quest that I am on.
That too.
By asking this person, and then you get the answer from God, I love that you just explained that.
Yeah, you're inviting someone on a journey. Yeah. That, you're joining them in that journey.
Yeah.
And it's so rad. You're in that craft of everyone that sits in this chair.
Yeah.
You're initiating quest. all the time.
And that's so rad, right? Like going on a quest is just, it's lighting me up just as I'm saying, and my hair on my neck is standing up. It's just such a fun thing. It brings us back to that inner child of, hey, we're going on a quest, we're going on an adventure. And it's such a simple, I love it, John. It's such a simple thing to do, and it can make such a big impact. And man, I got to admit, like the better, the better questions I could ask, the better answers that you get, and it's just, it could be a simple question, but it's just so impactful. So it's a wonderful code, and I really appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Yeah, thanks for making me dial in like that. I was like, I was swimming through the internal library of bumper stickers.
Yeah, you got it though. You nailed it. John, you're obviously a gentleman. It comes across in your energy and the way that you speak, and a gentleman's guide to her cycle. It's genius. When you told me that you wrote this book, of course I could relate to it. I'm sure many men gentlemen out there, men can relate to it out there, because, I'll just speak for myself, but I've had many challenges in relationship over the years, trying to navigate this mysterious, thing that happens once a month. And it's caused many ruptures in my relationships and all kinds of stuff. So I'd love to dive into this a little bit more.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Again, we can cry on each other's shoulders on another topic.
Yeah. I know a lot of men struggle with this. I know guys that actually, they either leave the house for a period of time, or they get their significant other to leave the house for a significant time, because the energy is so intense.
Yeah.
So this is a great topic. I can't wait to read this book. I know I'm going to benefit from it.
Yeah.
So right from the author, himself, please tell me how this came to be, and I'd love to hear it.
Totally. Well, I'll start with a little bit of humor that most men, when they get on the phone, somewhere within the first 5 minutes, one of the guys on the end of the line is going to make a comment about the weather.
Right.
It's a very, very man thing to do.
For sure.
And so that was a truth that I wanted to keep top of heart. And then my family, like many families out there, lived their life on a farm thanks to the Farmer's Almanac, which is an annual reference guide that's given to you that helps you be prepared for the seasons to come. Mm-hmm. It's actually wild accurate. And anyway, I grew up with this thing, and I had this epiphany one time when reading a book. My wife has a bunch of books about her period. Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And all those books are written by women. Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
Right.
And so, one time I was just curious, and, I'm like trying to decode these things as a man. Mm-hmm. And really struggling. And then in one of the books, the author, she referenced, instead of saying the luteal phase or the, follicular phase, mm-hmm. the ovulation phase, she said inner winter, inner fall, inner summer, and my mind exploded. Because I'm like, I'm a guy.
Yeah.
I care about the weather.
Yeah,
I'm always thinking about the seasons, Farmer's Almanac. And I had this epiphany where I was like, all right, I need to scratch my own itch as a fellow student. And I want to write the Farmer's Almanac for guys in regarding the 4 phases that a woman who has an active menstrual cycle is going to go through. Brilliant. And, a couple months later, we have a book.
I love it.
And so, I love writing this analogy where on an annual basis, it's not just guys, but we'll keep it on this topic. It applies to women too, but humans, we actually look forward to the seasons, mm-hmm. right? We're like, ooh, fall's coming. I felt that brisk wind, like mm-hmm. get to bring out the jacket, get to bring out the flannels, get to bring out all the candles. Like our food's going to become more hearty and savory. Like we actually anticipate and lean in mm-hmm. when there is a new season upon us. Mm-hmm. So why not do that with the woman in your life mm-hmm. who has 4 seasons a month? Mm. And that's really the core idea. Look, you'll never know the woman in your life completely. I'll never know mine. We'll never have women completely figured out.
Sure.
But just like we are as men in this prepared mindset, we can be prepared for the season upon us, right? Oh, winter's coming. Got to get the pipes ready so they don't freeze. Oh, summer's coming. Cool. Spring's on the way. Got to get seeds planted.
Right.
And so to me, I wanted a guide that just took a natural intuition on an annual basis and just applied that to this relationship dynamic.
Yes.
So that you can understand what's happening and know that how you show up in summer needs to be different from how you show up in winter. And it's the same with her inner seasons.
Right. I love it, dude. This is brilliant. I already know this is going to help me so much. What's the winter season? Like, what's the harsh one? It's like, gets really cold.
So the usually the two roughest, and by the way, I interviewed about 100 women for the book.
Cool.
And interviewed 50 men to I wanted it to be useful for them,
Get
but
the
also,
perspective,
exactly. And pretty much across the board for the men, the inner fall and inner winter, which would be the luteal, AKA premenstrual, PMS, that's, the acronym. And then the actual bleed, the menstrual cycle, that's the winter. Those are challenging because I think a lot of times we're guilty as men expecting women to be men, just like women are guilty of expecting us to be like women.
Sure.
And so, in fall, one way to frame it is she's about to have a death inside of her. Like, if you knew death was intimate,
right?
Like, wouldn't you be a little stressed out?
Right.
Wouldn't you be a little on edge? Wouldn't you be a little,
right?
Worried about everything? And then obviously when the bleed happens, the winter, like that is a death occurring. Like, it's wild to think that from a female anatomy, she was born with a limited amount of eggs and loses them every menstrual cycle. And it's a bank account that's only draining.
Right.
So it's a grieving period. It's a death process.
Right.
And so I frame it in different ways in the book of, yes, she's probably going to be very emotional. She's going to have a lot of questions about everything. She's going to be worried about all kinds of things that you can't wrap your mind around necessarily. But how would you show up for her in a grieving process? How would you show up for her if she was ill? Because in a way she is.
Right.
And so making it not this like threat, but actually she's in need of nurturing. And to understand what's happening, to me, you can lean into it out of support and curiosity. In each phase in the book, I have recommended questions and recommended affirmations that like honor, the theme of that phase. And you can show up in a place of service. And by the way, sometimes when you ask, an often answer you get during those two, the fall and the winter, sometimes they'll be like, just go away. And it's like, okay, if that's what's in best service of you, like, I'm not going to take offense to that.
Right.
Like, I get that. But I think like what the real shift for me was realizing that it is a death occurring. So that allowed me to lean more into that gentleness and less away from that, like, you shouldn't treat me that way.
Right.
Yeah. Because again, if you and I knew that we're going to start bleeding out of our genitals in a week, it's like, I'd probably be a little not stoked about that. Yeah. And then when it was happening, I'd probably not be the most stoked either.
Yeah.
So it's a new framing for empathy and understanding. And, let's talk man psychology. We love ourselves a good reward. If you show up in service in the fall and winter, your spring and summer, it's going to be real nice.
Nice.
It's going to be real nice.
Nice.
And so every month you get this opportunity to invest in the connection. Because again, we'll never fully know, but just like with the weather, like a great farmer, you can get better and better each season at how to be more prepared, how to make use of that. You ain't going to change the season.
Right.
The season is the season, but you can change yourself on how you like flow with that season.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, it makes sense. You're going to be more prepared, and you're going to be more prepared to show up with more empathy and compassion, which is two energies that we should, be practicing more as men and human beings in general. So, man, this is awesome. I really look forward to reading this book. Like I told you prior, I ordered it and definitely going to dive in.
Awesome, brother. Yeah, and again, it's you could read it from start to finish in probably 25 or 30 minutes.
Awesome.
Just like the Farmer's Almanac keyword guide, it's referential. So pick it up when you're feeling that tension. You feel stuck. You feel frustrated. Pick it up and ask her where's she at in her cycle.
Yeah.
Do your best to track it. And again, reference it. There'll be a page in there that can put you into some state of action that can deepen the connection and support her. And then one other thing on that is women offer a invitation. Because again, by default, us humans will only get 4 seasons a year. And by being in partnership with a woman with an active menstrual cycle, you get an invitation into the vibe of that season. Because like when a woman's in her fall or winter, she's a bit more inward. Well, if you're in tune with her, it's a chance for you to go inward.
Right.
Rest ethic, taking a second, because she's doing some internal cleansing and reflection. And if you're interacting with her in conversation, even though you're not bleeding, you get to tap into like some of the same feelings and thought processes, which every human benefits from, regardless of gender. So I think women's menstrual cycles are a great invitation to men to get a more full spectrum experience, just like nature does.
Well said, brother. That's beautiful. I look forward. I'm going to take you up on that invitation and dive in. And I think it could only help, men out there as well, and dive deeper, not only in their relationship, but with themselves as well. So that's really cool. Definitely eons ahead. John, I got to say it again. You have wonderful energy. You mentioned it earlier, where and I see it now. You're like an internal enthusiastic optimist. And
Nailed it.
Yeah, I love it, and it's a beautiful thing to be around. It's contagious. So it makes me genuinely curious. Is there something that you believe, John Fitch, that most people around you would disagree with? Because I find you're a pretty agreeable person to be around. This energy is contagious. So and it could be a no, but I'm wondering if is there something that you believe firmly in your heart that most people in your life would actually disagree with?
Hardships and tragedies are good things.
Tell me more.
It's around this idea of you can't control what happens to you, but you can control what you do with what happens to you. And I think tragedies and hardships are inevitable. So go ahead and get rid of that idea that, they shouldn't happen. They're going to happen. And if you can have this mindset, when they happen, they can be this enormous calling into your potential. Right? Joseph Campbell, hero's journey. Like if it wasn't for the abyss in the tragic moments, you'd be like, this movie sucked.
Yeah, that's right.
That's where the transformation is. And so I think instead of, all this prevention of tragedy, all this like attempt for proactivity, it's like actually be okay and know that they're coming and just lean into them.
Yeah.
And I think that unless you have tragedies and hardships, like you will plateau as an individual.
I agree. In the valleys we grow, and in those valleys, and I've been in many in my life, and some pretty recently as well. And it's pretty tough when you're in there. But if somehow you could have the knowing that on the other side of this is a better version of yourself that's going to actually look back and be grateful for these hardships and tragedies somehow, because as long as we're still alive, we're still in the game. You have a chance.
And if you're worm food, you're really in the game, baby. You're gonna be mushroom food, worm food. Yeah. What I appreciate too that is relevant to this topic, brother, is first time we met, there was just a lot of humor.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm convinced that the comedy scene here in Texas, it's happening elsewhere, but especially what's happening here, like that is very important work.
For sure.
Because, you know, half of the jokes are around tragic things in life. And I think you have to be able to, if you're going to make the most of a hardship and tragedy, it's like the ideal gift wrap is humor around it. Cause it'll snap you out of the like, everything's over. And instead be like, yeah, there actually is some irony there. And that's kind of ridiculous that happened. And it becomes like a little bit of a tailwind to then be like, all right, how is this going to change me?
Right.
And I appreciate the humor you have as well. And I think all of us should be looking at our hardships, tragedies, dilemmas with a little joke now and then too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great that you say that. It's such laughter's the best medicine. So I appreciate it so much because I just love laughing and I could be taking myself too seriously too. So someone with a good sense of humor is just such a great sign of intelligence because you're able to alchemize it. You're able to spin something from a negative to a positive, and we're alive, right? We're in the game and we're existing, and that to me is just such a blessing in itself, right? As long as we're here, it's like, okay, I could find a way to make this funny and keep going.
This is a total random question and a bit funny. With your expertise in mushrooms, you know, like right now there's this company that allows you after you die, they can turn you into a tree.
Right.
Has anyone become like a platform to inoculate psilocybin mushrooms out of?
That would be
I think that might be my route, dude.
That's a good route, dude. It's
like, I'm like, hey, everyone usually has their funeral like a week after their death. We're going to need a few months because we're going to need some cubensis to grow out of me. And then I want y'all to tap into that.
Dude, that's a journey and a half after. Like that would be literally such a trip. So
maybe we got a business idea on our
hands. We might
hands.
have something there. Yeah, for sure. Might have to do some R&D on that one.
I mean, mushrooms live off decay.
Right. No, it's just like, it's there's something there, John, for sure. John, besides that, this has been a wonderful conversation. It's been great getting to know you better. I love your energy.
Yeah, likewise, brother.
Thank you. Is there anything, what's alive in John Fitch right now? What's alive in your heart that you might be working on or anything else that you want to share?
And I would love, after I reflect, if you feel called, for you to share your answer to the same concept.
Sure.
For a while, I used to have this mindset of like, don't idolize anyone. But lately I have been idolizing somebody. And I think I'm better off for it. And
cool.
I'd mentioned his name earlier, and I'm on a deep Joseph Campbell rabbit hole.
Love Joseph Campbell, dude.
Yeah. And I'm writing my first fiction novel right now called The Conscious Cowboy, which is a psychedelic Western.
Dope, dude.
It's going to be a good one. I'm excited
awesome.
to get your feedback on it.
I can't wait.
But why I did it was after rewatching an interview with Joseph Campbell and Bill Moyer on the power of myth. And Joseph, like, with all of his heart saying, we need new myths. And I just see the power of new fictional characters, archetypes, stories, and that being such an amazing vehicle of narrative and words. And yeah, my answer, or I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I hope people start diving more into myths. Like, sure, kick back your feet, watch a good series, watch a good show, enjoy yourself. But like, try to find the deeper symbolism in the story, because that's what Joseph Campbell's body of work was, is like, here's this story or movie, and here's the deeper thing in this character or their storyline. And I just encourage people to do that more with the stories they're taking in. But would love to know, like, is there anyone you're idolizing currently that has been good medicine or inspiration for you?
Yeah, well, I'll just piggyback on that for a sec. Like, I love Joseph Campbell. Like, this guy was one of the most impactful, people that I came across in my life, and it got me into mythology and the hero's journey and all this kind of stuff. And, once I learned that he was the inspiration for Star Wars, like, a lot of people didn't know that. I was like, man, this guy was just on a whole other level, and that was like a pivotal point in my life. coming across Joseph Campbell. So hearing you say that and he's your inspiration and idolization, that's super cool. Like, I think he's a super legend. Who I've been idolizing lately, brother, and this could be cliche, but I've just been diving into different books and stories besides the Bible is Yeshua, is Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
I've been following Jesus for a while now.
Beautiful.
For several years, but I've been getting into the books of the Essene Gospels, where it follows Jesus in the years between when he's 12 years old and 30 years old, where they don't talk about him in the Bible. And he was studying with this group called the Essenes, and they were learning all these mystic practices and all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of like where he went for his like Jedi training in his hero's journey, where he went into the abyss and where he did his 40 days in the desert and all this kind of stuff. So it's just giving a lot of backstory to, something that I was already all in on, but now it's just putting these pieces together that I had no idea about. And it's just making more sense. And it's putting me on a quest, and internally as well, because it's just filling a lot of gaps that I didn't know were even there. So that's been really cool.
Right on, brother. I mean, I wish we could combine forces where Joseph Campbell would go deep in what you're reading and then give us a 90-minute lecture.
Oh, I wish. That would be epic.
That would be legendary.
Legendary. John, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you.
So easy. It is just, you're great.
Likewise. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. Where can people find you and tap in with you and, find more about your books and what you're up to?
Sure. Just go on Instagram. I'm at John Fitch. I'm having fun posting content about being a gentleman. You might see me in a cowboy outfit playing a Native American stone flute in the middle of a field of flowers. I'll be posting about all my upcoming books. I love when people just hit me up, message me. It's kind of wild how Instagram's also a messenger now.
Yeah.
But just there, I tend to be a very visual person, and I share a lot of stuff, and just don't hesitate to reach out if you are reading Gentleman's Guide and want to ask me a question. Know that I'm probably asking the same question. Again, I'm just a fellow student with you, but yeah, just find me on Instagram and hit me up.
Right on, brother. Awesome. Thank you so much.
My honor.
Awesome.